Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome everyone to today's revision session, where we're basically cracking open a virtual topper's notebook. Today, we are breaking down an absolutely incredible survival story from your syllabus. We're Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together by Gordon Cook and Alan East. We've got a fantastic, highly structured set of study notes to go through. And look, my goal here isn't just to help you memorize facts for your exams, although we'll do that too. It's to make sure you actually feel the thrill and the absolute terror of this amazing true story. Let's get started.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. First, the overview and ambition, then the crew and Wavewalker, followed by key vocabulary, the timeline of the crisis, and finally, the core lessons and takeaways. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Overview and the Ambition.
The narrator, who is a 37-year-old businessman, and his wife Mary spent 16 years, yes, literally 16 years, preparing for this in their free time. Their ultimate goal? To duplicate the famous round-the-world voyage made by the legendary Captain James Cook exactly 200 years earlier. Just imagine that level of dedication. 16 years of grueling preparation, all for this one massive dream. It's absolutely crucial to grasp the immense scale of this lifelong ambition before we see what actually happens out there on the water.
Moving right along to Section 2, the crew and Wavewalker.
So who are our voyagers? We've got Gordon, the narrator, his wife Mary, and their incredibly brave kids, Jonathan, who is just 6, and Suzanne, who is 7. Now, as soon as they reached Cape Town, they realized something pretty important. They couldn't tackle the brutal southern Indian Ocean all by themselves. So they hired 2 highly experienced crewmen, American Larry Vigil and Swiss Herb Seigler. Keep Larry and Herb in mind, because when disaster finally strikes, their roles are going to be absolutely critical.
Now, just look at the wild contrast here. On one hand, you have the Wavewalker, a 23-meter, 30-ton, professionally built wooden-hulled beauty. They had spent months rigorously testing it in the absolute roughest weather they could find. But then compare that to their planned journey, 105,000 kilometers over 3 years, a 23-meter boat going up against the roughest ocean in the world. As you'll see, even the best preparation can feel incredibly tiny when faced with the harsh reality of the open sea.
Okay, on to Section 3, Key Vocabulary and Expressions.
First up on our vocab list is honing our seafaring skills. This essentially means improving and perfecting the ability to navigate the ocean. You see, the family didn't just buy a boat and impulsively set sail. No, they spent 16 straight years in their free time sharpening, or honing, these exact skills in British waters. It shows their intense dedication, and honestly, it's a fantastic phrase to drop into your exam answers. Next is ominous silence. You know that saying, the calm before the storm? Well, this describes that heavy, eerie, threatening quiet right before a massive disaster strikes. In the text, this spine-chilling moment happens around 6 p.m. on January 2nd. The wind suddenly drops, the sky grows ominously dark, and this eerie silence instantly tells the captain that something terrible is about to happen.
Then we have Mayday calls, which are international radio distress signals used by ships that are in critical danger. As the ship was sinking, the narrator was desperately sending out Mayday calls, but there were absolutely no replies. Why? Because they were entirely isolated in an incredibly remote and dangerous corner of the world, deep in the southern Indian Ocean.
Finally, we have pinpricks in the vast ocean. Imagine taking a tiny needle and poking a hole in a massive map. That's a pinprick. The narrator uses this metaphor to describe their one and only hope, finding Ile Amsterdam. It was a tiny, 65-kilometer-wide French scientific base, completely hidden inside 150,000 kilometers of raging, violent ocean. It was quite literally like trying to find a needle in a massive, watery haystack.
Let's turn to Section 4, Surviving the Deadly Storm.
So they depart in July 1976. Fast forward to December 25th, and the weather is completely atrocious, but they actually still manage to celebrate Christmas with a tree. However, dawn on January 2nd changed absolutely everything. Gigantic waves hit. By that evening, a massive wave literally exploded over their ship. From that moment on, it turned into a non-stop, desperate battle for survival until they finally spotted land on January 6th. Now, pay attention here because this directly answers one of your main textbook questions. How exactly did the captain react when those gigantic waves appeared? Well, he didn't panic. Instead, he followed a very strict procedure.
First, they dropped the storm jib to slow the boat down. Then, they lashed a heavy mooring rope across the stern. Next, they double-lashed absolutely everything on board, went through their life raft drill, donned their life jackets and oilskins, and just waited. It was a display of absolute textbook leadership. But as it turns out, all that preparation couldn't stop a wave that the captain described as perfectly vertical and twice the height of normal waves. A massive explosion of green and white water smashed right onto the deck. The narrator was literally thrown overboard and fully accepted his own death before miraculously being tossed back onto the ship. His ribs were cracked, his mouth was filled with blood, and the decks were completely smashed open. Water was flooding in everywhere. Debris blocked the hand pumps, and to make matters worse, the electric pump short-circuited. It was an absolute nightmare scenario.
And that brings us to our final part, Section 5, Optimism and Final Takeaways.
The actual inspiration for the chapter's title comes from this exact, highly emotional moment. When the captain went below deck to comfort his kids, his 6-year-old son, Jonathan, looked right at him and said, "But Daddy, we aren't afraid of dying if we can all be together. You and Mummy, Sue and I." The immense bravery of a tiny 6-year-old gave the captain a massive surge of new determination. Along with 7-year-old Sue quietly hiding her severe head injury, it was this pure courage that gave them all the strength they needed to fight the storm.
Let's quickly touch on a working with words exercise from your text, which, by the way, often pops up in short answer sections. Take the word knot. In a nautical context, it's a unit of speed at sea. But in everyday language, fastening a rope is called tying a knot. Understanding these dual meanings is a super straightforward way to secure marks and really show off your reading comprehension skills.
And guys, this is exactly why we study literature. It's not just about memorizing facts, it's about deeply understanding the human spirit. So what lessons do we actually learn from such hazardous experiences when we are literally face to face with death? Think about how Larry and Herb pumped water like madmen, how Gordon never stopped calculating their position, and how a 6-year-old boy showed profound optimism. As you prepare for your exams, I want to leave you with this question. How can you face the challenges in your own life with that exact same calm, unwavering optimism?